The Nintendo Switch 2 is finally here, and so far, opinions are mixed. I and several members of the team have had them for about a week now, and it's clear that Nintendo got a lot right. But it's also clear that there are some skid marks on the rainbow road of Nintendo's most expensive console ever. First impressions, at least for me, were extremely positive. The new HDR screen absolutely dwarfs the original Switch, and even the Switch OLED, and the whole device feels significantly more premium, with a much better magnetic detachment mechanism for the Joy-Cons, soft touch plastics, more tactile buttons, bigger joysticks, and an ergonomic situation that, okay, is still far from ideal, but is worlds ahead of the original. Dbrand, who sponsored this video, has you covered there, by the way, with their Killswitch protective ergonomic case and screen protectors. We'll be showing those in more detail at the end of this video, but from what I've heard from them, you might not want to wait that long to get an order in because Switch 2 accessories are moving very quickly at myhandsareverysmall.com. And I can see why. The screen on the Switch 2 is not tough, as our friend Zach from Jerry Rig Everything discovered. But to Nintendo's credit, even though they maintained the same thickness as the original, once you throw on a screen protector, it seems like they've delivered a pretty rugged, albeit difficult to repair console here. I just wish I could say the same about the Joy-Con controllers, which appear to still be susceptible to drifting. More on that later.
First, I want to talk a bit more about the console itself. The OG Switch was obsolete before it even launched, 8 years ago. But still, I'm really impressed with how much more powerful the new one is. With double the CPU core count, triple the amount of usable RAM, and 10 times the graphics processing, assuming none of it is fake frames, we ended up with a generational performance leap, the likes of which we haven't seen in a very long time. All those miracle ports that barely clung to playable frame rates at sub 540p resolution run effortlessly here, with some more than doubling their performance, while also managing to appear much sharper because they no longer require dynamic resolution scaling. And I haven't even talked about the games that got one of Nintendo's Switch 2 upgrade patches, which so far seem to look and run great, which does matter to me. To the utter dismay of all the Zelda fans in my life, I've tried multiple times to get into either of Link's most recent open world adventures, but every time I've abandoned them, feeling like the experience on the original Switch's hardware was holding it back. I could have emulated, but as you guys know, it's not my favorite way to experience a game, especially not for the first time. So I decided to wait for the better Nintendo approved way to explore Hyrule. And now that it's here, I am pleased to report that wow, I'm in.
Finally!
The Switch 2 has got me stoked about Nintendo gaming again.
You and a lot of people. Like everyone else, we lean on awesome channels like Digital Foundry and GVG to really get into the fine details of visual upgrades like these. But to our PC gaming eyes, both from a cross-platform and first-party perspective, we feel like Nintendo has struck an outstanding balance with the Switch 2's performance, both maintaining a power envelope that keeps it handheld while upgrading the performance to the point where both docked and even on the smaller handheld screen, it's hard not to see the improvements. Guys, this ain't no PS5 to PS5 Pro. Oh yeah, I think that pixel looks a little better shaded. This is more like going from the PS3 to the PS4, which coincidentally is about where I would place the visuals overall. Except that thanks to more modern rendering paradigms like ray traced lighting, not to mention Nintendo's do more with less visual style, I think it's fair to say that if Mario Kart World, which I remind you is a launch title and surely hasn't unlocked its full potential yet, is anything to go by, especially the first party games are gonna end up looking better. And that's not the end of the good news. The increase in processing power and the faster flash storage, both in terms of the internal 256 gigs and the expandable microSD express slot, both make noticeable improvements to load times and the UI's snappiness, which is fortunate because the game acquisition experience can be a bit unoptimized.
I immediately bought a year of Nintendo Online Plus expansion pack so I could get access to the Zelda upgrade packs without an additional fee, and found out that I could still download the game without the upgrade, but could also download the upgrade without the game. Whoops. And while we're on the negatives, I gotta talk about the joysticks on the Joy-Con. Obviously, Joy-Cons aren't meant to be the world's best controller. I mean, these shoulder buttons are what passes for an upgrade. But as much as I'm willing to accept smaller face buttons, these joysticks kinda suck. And I think that's partially due to the rubber skirt that's meant to prevent dust and debris from finding a way into the mechanism. It seems to fold over occasionally, making them feel kinda off. So if you're a handheld hero, you might find yourself eagerly awaiting third-party options from the likes of Hori. However, if you're the type to throw out the kickstand and grab a Pro controller, it might not bother you as much. Your old Pro controller is forward compatible, which is super nice. But the even better news is that the new Pro controller is actually really good. And I found myself enjoying the Switch 2 most from my couch with one of those in my hands. It's the first Nintendo console that looks great on a modern 4K HDR display, which makes it all the more frustrating that Nintendo couldn't quite find the 96th exit. While the built-in screen supports variable refresh rate, which reduces tearing artifacts and enhances animation smoothness during frame rate dips, this feature is not supported via the dock, seemingly because HDMI output relies on DisplayPort Alt mode and NVIDIA G-Sync doesn't play nice with this conversion. It's possible that Nintendo will address this at some point in the future. They did eventually add Bluetooth support to the Switch 1 after all, but I wouldn't expect it to happen overnight, which is a bit of a downer. The question is though, does that get in the way of fun?
Well, that depends on your perspective. I mean, it's Nintendo, so obviously there's fun to be had. I mean, they're one of the only developers that is still pumping out phenomenal single-player and couch co-op game after another across a multitude of genres, and generally without ongoing monetization. So I think the small stuff, like a sometimes locked refresh rate, shouldn't make anybody that mad at them. But what about charging $20 more per game? That might do it.
Each, like, for a single game?
That's right. If, like my son, you've somehow missed the online discourse, Nintendo is now asking $80 for their marquee titles, which has left a lot of gamers feeling left out. And that's a perspective that's super easy to understand. Nintendo has been extremely profitable at just $60 per game. So for them to act like, oh, woe is me, inflation has suddenly forced our hand, I get why that feels like the kind of out-of-touch move that big corporations make when they're getting a little too comfy on their throne. Adding insult to injury, many Switch 2 game boxes are just that. Decorative boxes with either a download code or a hardware license key inside, rather than a full physical copy of the game, something that harms resale and therefore affordability for many gamers.
It also contributes to the game preservation issues that purely digital consoles introduce. With that said, I definitely prefer paying upfront for a good game instead of getting the microtransaction-ridden slop we've been subjected to in recent years. So while it definitely sucks paying $20 more for Nintendo games that will likely never go on sale, if my only options are pay what Nintendo demands to keep creating unique gaming experiences or accept a future where everything is a live service game with tons of microtransactions, the choice becomes pretty clear. For me personally, I'm gonna be paying that Nintendo tax for now, but I'll be doing it very selectively for expensive flagship titles and allocating more of my gaming budget to those smaller team AA titles that I've been getting a ton of enjoyment out of lately.
Coming back to the hardware, we've got, you guessed it, another Nintendo choice that has divided the community. The bad news is you're getting an LCD screen on a console that costs more than the Switch OLED, leaving room for Nintendo to introduce a higher priced Switch 2 down the road. Ah! The good news is that the LCD screen you get is pretty darn good for an LCD. It's 7.9 inches, exhibits almost no distracting motion blur, and actually looks better in real world usage than its raw brightness measurements would seem to indicate. We measured it in SDR at only about 380 nits, and while we don't have a test for HDR for this device yet, it seems to my eyes that between Nintendo's art design for Switch 2 and remastered titles, and or the HDR capability of the display, it seems to get a bit of extra punch in HDR. One area where it clearly falls behind a well-tuned OLED display though is in minimum brightness. And there's just no other way to put this. The Steam Deck OLED clobbers this thing when it comes to late night gaming if you don't want to sear your retinas, along with pretty much everything else. The last big spec is the 120Hz refresh rate, which was both a surprise for me personally, given Nintendo's allergy to high performance, and also pretty exciting for me personally. I mean, there's the obvious stuff, like it's gonna be cool that some games are gonna use it for spectacularly smooth gameplay. But what I'm secretly hoping for is that we're gonna see NVIDIA's advanced video transcoding engine, which we know is in here, turned on, enabling some kind of remote gameplay on the Switch 2. That could potentially unlock a whole world of non-Nintendo games. To be clear, I'm not holding my breath for that. I'm just saying that because they made this hardware choice, technically it would be possible to play Game Pass games on Xbox Cloud Gaming or something like that, and high refresh rates in those cases really cut down on the latency, turning it from this is quite playable to this is quite enjoyable, at least for me. And that would be especially cool because of what it would do for battery life. Streaming is way less energy intensive than rendering locally, and at the moment, the Switch 2 is gonna have you selecting your gaming seat based on proximity to an outlet rather than based on comfort. It's not bad, it's certainly not worse than a typical handheld gaming PC, and is even a little better than the OG from our quick and dirty early testing, but it falls well short of the Switch OLED, which is gonna feel like a major step back if you're coming from that. Oh, I couldn't finally find a spot to talk about this before, so I'll also discuss the regression in portability here. It is still slim, which is really nice. But I was down in LA for the ROG Xbox Ally X announcement, and I was like, oh, well, whatever, it's only 20 minutes. I'll just walk to the IHOP for my midnight waffles. Oh, I should bring the Switch too. And then I realized, it's really late at night, and I'm on this random street in LA with the hottest launch hardware of the year, and no pocket large enough to accommodate it. Not even on my cargo pants from LTTstore.com. So I quickly looked around and I tucked it into my Framework hoodie, also from LTTstore.com. Smooth, right? But not as smooth as it'll eventually be to tuck it into our upcoming crossbody bag from LTTstore.com.
Bottom line, if you own a Switch only to play the big Nintendo games, this is the best way to play them. But it's probably okay to wait for a few more of them to come out. Maybe next month Donkey Kong will push you over the edge, or maybe it'll be Metroid Prime 4 next, something. But like, there's no hurry in my opinion. And I personally want to see if Nintendo is going to action some of those questionable policy changes before giving them any more money, like bricking consoles for stepping out of line, even if that stepping out of line is just trying to fix it yourself.
And I'd also keep an eye on Nintendo's behavior around subscriptions. They might not have microtransactions in the games, but they sure as heck have them, and it seems like Nintendo is Nintending for Nintendo Switch Online to be an integral part of Switch ownership this time around. So you're gonna have to add that to your bill, along with their iconically never on sale library of $80 games and ludicrously priced probably gonna drift accessories. All of which means that if I hadn't needed to buy this, like to make this video, I wouldn't be stoked on the value I'm getting right now. Not only is the library of exclusive launch titles extremely small, and I gotta say, personally, as a non-sweaty online gamer, not enjoying Mario Kart World that much. Like many of you, I have a deep library of other, not Switch 2 games that I haven't played, and like many of you, I probably got most of them on sale from one of the many other storefronts on other platforms. Platforms that don't charge a subscription to back up your save games to the cloud. So I agree that the Switch 2 is probably gonna be a wait for most people at the moment. But even if I wasn't stoked on the value, I'd still be stoked on the hardware. It's a Switch, except it is better than my old one in just about every meaningful way. I mean, the haptics, even the speakers, they sound so much better to the point where just holding this thing and looking at it, it's enough to make me wanna jump right back into Hyrule to finally play that game on hardware that does it justice.
Agreed. The Switch 1 had arguably the worst ratio of library greatness to hardware greatness of all time. It was bad enough that I passed over some pretty incredible games, even though I owned a Switch. I just didn't want to tolerate Nintendo's cheaped out hardware. So I guess this is a classic case of careful what you wish for. I wanted more expensive hardware and I got it.
Which means now you're gonna need a way to protect it. Like with this kill switch from our sponsor, Dbrand. As usual, they showed up with a big bag of money, and as usual, that's the only way that they can keep a piece of ass this fine in their life. Speaking of fine pieces of, gotta say, kill switch case for the Switch 2, honestly, pretty nice. It's kind of like the kill switch case that they made for the Steam Deck and ROG Ally, but with a bunch of smart modifications that enhance the Switch's whole hybrid gaming console concept. So, imagine you're on a flight. You want to play your Switch 2. Right? That's a thing. Those Joy-Cons, not super comfortable to hold for a long time. Well, Dbrand added these ergonomic handles to their case that make it way more comfortable to use for long stretches of time. But wait, there's more. See that seat tray in front of you? Well, hey, maybe you want to put your Switch down on it. Well, unlike many Switch 2 cases right now, Dbrand designed their case with detachable Joy-Cons in mind, so you can still reach the kickstand even when you've got the case applied. So you just pop that down, detach your Joy-Cons, and boom, you are off to the races. Then all of a sudden you're landing, they're like, put your damn shit away. And I'm like, wait, 1 sec, I just gotta get my crush-proof travel cover. It's got a built-in game card tray and secures to the Switch 2 with this cool bungee latch. And boom, once that's done, you can throw it in your bag with whatever else you've got in there, no worries. Honestly, there's too many features of the Kill Switch to cover in a single sponsor segment, so if you wanna go take a look at what Dbrand's cooked up for the Switch 2 and save $35 while you're at it, just visit, oh, that is a new vanity URL, isn't it? myhandsareverysmall.com. If you guys enjoyed this video, why not check out Microsoft's desperate effort to gain a foothold in the handheld space with the ROG Xbox Ally X. To be clear, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm legitimately extremely excited about the gaming-tuned Windows that's launching alongside it. But I will say this, if you thought the Switch 2 was expensive, whoo-wee!